Hello, I am Saida Faria and I'm going to be doing the critical movie review for the movie Juno, a 2007 comedy drama that explores the life of a 16-year-old girl who accidentally got pregnant. This movie takes the trope of being a young single mom and sparks the important social commentary on the adoption process, womanhood, and politics. After a sexual encounter with her friend Polly Bleecker, Juno, a 16-year-old outspoken girl, falls pregnant and is left to make a decision. The movie's plot starts off with Juno, who grew up with her father, stepmother, and sister, who eventually breaks the news to her family that she has decided to keep the pregnancy full term after a protester outside of her abortion clinic insisted that her baby had already grown fingernails. A shaken Juno breaks this news to her family and also Polly, the father of her child, who's also in love with her but is too shy to admit it. Her parents, however, take in the information and support Juno in her expedition to finding a family to adopt her unborn child. From the very beginning of the process, Juno has made it her mission to distance herself from this entire situation as much as possible, and more specifically, the family that she ends up choosing. She then finds Mark and Vanessa in the newspaper who were looking to adopt, and they were the physical manifestation of the ideal couple Juno had decided she wanted the baby to be raised by. Outwardly, they were both comfortable and successful in their lives and desired a child to complete their family, but they haven't been able to due to Vanessa's issues with infertility. Throughout the pregnancy, Juno then finds herself getting closer to Mark and enjoys his company as she visits often under the guise of pregnancy updates. However, this is without Vanessa present. Juno truly believes that she is developing a close friendship with him. Meanwhile, Mark continues to push a dynamic filled with ambiguous romantic encounters with her. Juno's stepmom warns her about her naivete in the situation as an impressionable young girl involving herself in another's marriage. However, it was only after a boundary crossing situation with Mark, where he also reveals his desire to divorce Vanessa, Juno realizes the man that she regards as someone who knows better and as a friend is truly someone who is flawed and unready for such a big commitment. As she marches away from him in anger and tears, Vanessa walks in and recognizes Juno's discomfort and confronts Mark. This brings to light Mark's true feelings about the adoption, their marriage, and shatters the already disheartened Vanessa, who dreams of becoming a mother. After this, Juno ends up expressing her own feelings for Polly, and their reconciliation leaves Juno with the choice of continuing with the process of adoption or raising the child herself. She makes the decision to reach out to Vanessa only and states, "If you're still in, I'm still in." The movie ends with Juno, after birth, being consoled by both Polly and her father, and Vanessa meeting her new baby boy. I'm going to start off with the socio-cultural perspective that focuses on the influences of social interaction, society, and culture on an individual's way of thinking and behavior. Let's observe Vanessa being completely disheartened in the beginning of the movie, which led her to trying her hardest to connect with Juno and trying to figure out how to satisfy her the best. As someone who has been having doubts about Juno's willingness to follow through with the entire process, she does everything in her power to ensure that Juno is well accommodated from the beginning. Especially because she desires so deeply to become a mother, her process with adoption so far has been disappointing, to say the least, and impacts how tense she is around Juno. She walks on her tiptoes to make sure everything goes well. And through the socio-cultural perspective, it is evident that Vanessa has been conditioned to believe that Juno will be another dead end. Not only because of her past experiences, but by the time her relationship with Mark ends, she has lost all hope. If we use the social cognitive theory proposed by Albert Bandura, which refers to the use of cognitive processes in relation to the understanding of the social world, Vanessa uses her past experiences with adoption to justify her wariness of Juno's willingness to go through with the entire process. She is only convinced after Juno continuously assures and reminds her of her current standing in society and her willingness and ability to become a parent. The humanistic perspective is the third force in psychology that focuses on those aspects of personality that make people uniquely human, such as subjective feelings and freedom of choice. Now let's continue with Juno's decision to not wanting to see the baby after giving birth, hence going through with a closed adoption. In my personal opinion, I believe that Juno is a very mature person for her age, in respect that she is very aware of her limits. Although she is very set on not becoming a mom at this point in her life, she's still very aware of the potential attachment she can grow to this child. Also, throughout the entire movie, she refers to the baby as a thing and depersonifies it for herself. Also, her father caught on to her reason for crying at the end of the movie when he says to her that she will get a chance to become a mother in the future, but that time in her own terms. Now, through the humanistic perspective, and especially for a 16-year-old, Juno had been relatively self-aware throughout the entire movie. Aside from her interactions with Mark, which she entered a gray area for, she stayed consistent with her words and actions. She had the awareness of her own boundaries and limits. Not to mention, she was physically, mentally, and emotionally supported by Polly and her family. Her needs were met, but she was aware that she would not be able to meet the needs of a child if it came down to it. Now we can get into Abraham Maslow's pyramid of self-actualization. Maslow proposes there are several levels of needs a person needs to fulfill before reaching the highest level of personality fulfillment. Throughout the movie, we can see that there is consistent effort and support from Juno's parents. From the pregnancy to guiding her about her adult relationships, Juno has a great foundation for making decisions for herself. And that's exactly what she does throughout the entire movie. This is also why she doesn't let the commentary at school bother her. Her needs from the base of the pyramid, the foundation, are met. So she is able to think rationally even though she is heavily pregnant. Her self-concept prevents her from making irrational decisions. Let's continue on to why Vanessa ignored and dismissed Mark's red flags throughout the entire movie. I believe her surroundings and the typical societal judgment mothers face lead her to believe that her value and likability as a mother is also attached to her being a wife. This also brings to the audience's attention the criteria for adoption and how excruciating the entire process can be, even for deserving parents. Also, since she is unable to have a biological child herself, she probably feels that she's the one that is lacking in the relationship as opposed to her husband. This must especially come up as his behavior towards her grows to be hostile. From the humanistic perspective, Vanessa's reasoning behind choosing to stay with Mark comes from the idealistic nature of society standards and her desires to meet them. She believes that staying with Mark and fulfilling that white picket fence outwardly will bring her closer to her desire of having a family, especially because she already had an inkling that Mark wasn't ready. Although her interpretation of what that exactly meant was off, she was willing to do anything to fix it. Henry Tajfel and John Turner developed the social identity theory, a theory in which the formation of a person's identity within a particular social group is explained by social categorization, social identity, and social comparison. We can use this theory to see that throughout the film, Vanessa has been preparing to be a mother her entire life. From her marriage with Mark to her reading parenting books, she has been aligning herself to what she has been socialized to believe what a good mother does and possesses. After the truth comes out, Juno gets mad at Mark for deceiving everyone in the situation. She gets angry and marches out. I believe that Juno behaves this way because she not only relates to him, while also regarding him at a high standard. Her reaction to him abandoning his wife and responsibilities is a direct reflection of how unstable he truly was in the relationship, as opposed to the idea that she had of him from the start. Since they are so similar, she also comes to realize that having a white picket fence doesn't automatically make someone qualified to become a parent. This, however, makes her final decision that much more meaningful. From the socio-cultural perspective, Juno had already made up an idea of what the baby's life would look like with its new parents. This image that she had been building in her mind was the first thing to shatter when she realized that Mark is not ready to be a father. This concern was already brought up to her by her stepmom, but as she suggested, her naivete led her to reject the idea of Mark's unfitness. We can use social identity theory to also recognize that Juno was raised by people who were able to give her a stable and loving childhood. Therefore, she sought out the idea of what that would look like for the child within Vanessa and Mark. They were the idealized version of themselves to Juno from the first time she saw them in the newspaper. Juno, however, ends up giving the baby to Vanessa only anyways. Juno's maturity level shines through in this situation. She could have ended up with the child last minute, as she also started a relationship with the child's father, Polly Bleecker. This was also the main concern for Vanessa. throughout the entire film because it is a typical response to those that have been through a similar situation. Juno realizes that although Vanessa is no longer with Mark, on her own, she is a force to be reckoned with, and especially as a parent. Both of the women's perspective on parenthood must have changed as well. This movie heavily focuses on the power of womanhood, and more specifically motherhood. From the socio-cultural perspective, we can see that they both make sacrifices with the end goal pertaining to the well-being of the child. Vanessa, by worrying about presenting everything as perfect, and Juno's initial decision of having a child to give up for adoption anyways. Now we can use Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory, which refers to the use of cognitive processes in relation to understanding the social world, to explain this situation. We can see the significance in the scene where Juno is observing Vanessa playing with a random child in the mall. This encounter is attached to Juno's perception of Vanessa. She internalized that moment in order to solidify and associate Vanessa with her innate desire to and capability of becoming a good mother. This is where Juno connects with Vanessa, building a sense of trust and security within her, sharing the mutual interest of wanting what is best for the baby. Lastly, let's continue on to the biological perspective. This is the perspective that attributes human and animal behavior to biological events occurring in the body. For example, genetic influences, hormones, and the activity of the nervous system. All this to say, how come Vanessa wanted children in the first place, especially so direly? As Juno observed, Vanessa was naturally drawn to children and she was good with them. I can infer from that her desire to become a mother in the first place must be too. However, that feeling must have intensified as the barriers to her becoming a mom kept showing up. Aside from the observation, for example, her infertility and disinterested husband. Biologically speaking, it can be interpreted that both Vanessa and Juno desire having a child at some point in their life. Vanessa just so happened to be at the stage where she is ready to become a mom, but Juno's desires and aches are recognized by her supportive and emotionally present father by the end of the movie. Using Maslow's pyramid, Vanessa's preparedness for becoming a mother was also what allowed her to continue to pursue becoming one. She was initially ready financially and physically. However, her experience with Juno was what allowed her to reach the actualization that her validity as a mother was never attached to Mark in the first place. Vanessa and Juno's story is a testament to how powerful the force of motherhood can be, and this movie specifically attests to that. Two lives that would have never otherwise interacted come together to change the life of an unborn one. The sacrifices and decisions made also provide a social commentary on parental fitness, abortion laws, adoption processes, family, and support. However, it was a successful conclusion to a beautiful story. Thank you for watching.